for those of you who are not familiar with what Unearthed Arcana is, you can see it on the webpage we have open over here. Psionic Options Visited. This is on Wizards of the Coast website. I'll put a link to it in the chat for anyone who's interested. And what it basically is this is a way that Wizards of the Coast, the creators of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, and all editions going way back to the TSR days, can put out new content for 5e and get feedback from players and then revise it before making it an official part of the game. So this is your way as a player to experience this content and let your voice be heard, so that when it actually becomes part of the official game in its entirety, right, you'll have a say in how it ends up being. It's really neat. They have feedback. If you scroll down a little bit, you can submit feedback for last week's stuff, which is spells and magical tattoos. I highly recommend doing that survey. And then additionally, what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be talking about these new psionic options. So I'm going to click that boy. Psionic options visited. It's interesting. Pete, this is what, the third psionics take they've had?
The big one was the Mystic.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's stuff. There's there's some stuff in 5e, and I was just reading this, and they're kind of mentioning that there's a lot of like monsters and stuff that use psionics.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, you can even look at the Great Old One Warlock, which kind of feels a little bit psionic in nature.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the big one was the Mystic, which they released as a full class, a full psionic-based class, a couple of years ago for the Unearthed Arcana.
And that's actually a great testament of why the player feedback is so important, and doing those surveys is so important. This is like their second or third try at making psionics at all for 5th edition D&D. And I mean, they just completely, when we read through here, you're going to find out they've completely thrown out the Mystic. They're just not even doing it. They're not going to make it work. They're not going to try. And that's because playtest feedback said, we don't want this for a multitude of reasons. But just to hammer in, as players, let your voice be heard, because these are things you get to play with in your games.
Indeed. Do you want to just start going in?
Yeah. Let's, how do I do that? Up here. Plus button. So, zooming in here.
Yeah, here at the beginning, it looks like we have a summary of what's in the pamphlet and a little bit about, actually, what Jeremy was just talking about, the previous attempts at psionics and kind of what they're moving away from, I think, to a certain extent. But we have here, it looks like this pamphlet is going to contain 3 subclasses here. The Psi Knight, and that's a revised fighter subclass that was previously called the Psychic Warrior. Which I don't know if I remember Psychic Warrior, Jeremy. How old is that?
That is not that old. I think.
Have we gone over that on the stream?
No, I don't think so. It's older. Well, and we might have done it in Brews. It's old.
So that one's old. There's a Soul Knife, a revised rogue subclass. I do remember the Soul Knife. And then the Psionic Soul, which is a revised Sorcerer Club subclass that was previously called the Aberrant Mind, which is actually a pretty recent Unearthed Arcana.
Yeah, that one we talked about on the show, actually.
Yeah, I actually very much liked the Aberrant Mind. It was a little bit too powerful, I remember, but I really liked the direction of that. So I'm actually almost sad to see them moving away from it, but I guess we'll see the execution when they come to it.
Yeah, but on the other hand, right, I could see why they tied it in here. The Aberrant Mind was all about, right, the like Mind Flayers, Cthulhu, the Far Realm, which in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons is very much tied to this psionic power. So I can see why they want to wrap it up in this instead of have it be its own thing. It's almost, I see it almost as a way of being like, hey guys, we put this cool thing you all like in psionics. Please like our psionics. For lack of a better term.
I mean, that's a fair way of saying it. They probably was some influence.
No, there's just a way of being like, hey guys, look how cool our psionics are. You liked this other thing. Now it's part of this.
We're just calling it psionic, but it's the same thing. And also they came out with, it looks like 3 new spells that were psionic in nature, and 5 feats that can confer psionic powers to any character. That's interesting. I don't know what that will be, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. And they were just talking also about some of the other psionic stuff they've done in the past that they're just doing away with. They don't like as much. But Jeremy, what is psionic power?
So psionic power is the power, right, of the mind, right? Unlike like divine power, which emanates from the supernatural forces of the gods, right? Or necrotic energy, which comes from the negative energy plane, which underlies all existence. Psionics is the power of the mind. It's almost the power of one's self. It's actually kind of close to the paladin of 5th edition D&D, but we're not going to talk about that. And there are so many creatures that are so core to Dungeons and Dragons that use psionics. The Mind Flayer I mentioned earlier is a quintessential example, stunning creatures with its mind blast and then devouring their brains. The Githyanki, less well known, but also powerful psionic creatures that are pretty popular in 5th edition D&D, or in Dungeons and Dragons in general.
And where the psionic, I think, starts to find its place away from the paladin is that it's a very like intelligence,
Yes.
mental acuity rather than just like charisma and force of personality. It is very heavily intelligence based.
Absolutely, it completely is. And you know, in earlier versions of D&D, they used to have psionics work in a bunch of different ways. Like this is unlike spells, which have been pretty consistent, right? Clerics prepare spells, and wizards know their spells, and wizards prepare spells from their spell book, right? And sorcerers know their spells. These are things that have been pretty core since these classes existed. Psionics is not. Every edition has done psionics pretty radically differently. You know, 4th edition treated psionics exactly like everything else. There was no difference, really, between psionics and other regular magic. But in 5th edition D&D, it's a little different. And the core aspects that they wanted to retain that have underlied all psionics in Dungeons and Dragons since its inception are that psionic powers come from the user. It's a person who's using the psionic abilities. It's not any sort of external power. It's their own mind. And that psionic aptitude can be used to both cast spells and sometimes to use magic that is beyond spells. Z-Bunny had a really great question in chat asking, how is it different than normal magic, and can I counterspell it? And the answer is sometimes. You know, if a spell is psionic, if they're like, for example, casting the telekinesis spell using their psionic power, you can counterspell it because the spells they're casting.
Yes,
However,
that would be the keyword spell.
Exactly. Whereas other bits of psionic power, like a lot of these subclasses we're going to see today, have little bits of telepathic prowess and telepathy that are not tied to a spell. And other classes, right, have special supernatural abilities, like the ability to move things via telekinetic powers, but not via the telekinesis spell. And those also can't be counterspelled. So unfortunately, there's not one simple answer to that. It is magical, but it is not inherently a spell.
I'm interested in the canon if, by definition, casting a spell with psionic powers is considered to evoke magic from the weave, or if it is just a force that you're creating in the air, which is irrelevant for the mechanics of how it works. But I'm just curious what is considered for that. Is that something that's addressed in this?
Yes, it is a little bit. And I'm not sure exactly where in it this is, but we're kind of glossing over this intro anyway. Effectively, the idea is they're both magic. And so they both pull at the strings of magic in the world as how they kind of look at it in 5th edition D&D, this weave that Pete was talking about. It's just some psionic abilities are so subtle and so almost second nature that there's no there's no barrier can just break it, right? A field that would dispel magic, right, may not affect it because it's simply so second nature, right? A counter spell cannot go fast enough to disrupt the connection between your mind and the weave. And I think that's kind of their idea of why, you know, certain things are just so simple for you, so second nature as a psionic character that they can't be counterspelled. You need a psi counter, Raz says. Oh, please, God, for the love of God, no psi counters. Oh, and no.
My other question.
Oh, my poor heart breaks.
Actually, I forgot my other question, but it'll come up as we're going through. I've no doubt again.
And I see,
them talking about it right here. Is psi a form of magic? I've scrolled ahead a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
One thing, actually, before we, I don't know if we want to read all this psi and 5e stuff here.
No, I don't think we have to go
of the thing. But one thing that's interesting here is it's saying that All of the subclasses and feats we're going to look at contain a singular resource called a psionic talent die.
Yeah.
So look out for that as we're going through, because it seems like they're all going to work with that mechanic.
And I really like that, because like Pete was saying before, they tried to make, with the Mystic, which was their first attempt at psionics in 5e, they tried to make one class that could do a lot of different things. And a lot of those things were very similar to what other classes would do, but the idea is, oh, but it's psionic this time. And
you it's psionic, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of the feedback that they got was that the Mystic was too powerful, too complicated, and most importantly, that it stomped on some of the things that made other classes special. Because that's what it was trying to do. It was trying to copy other classes, but with a psionic twist. And so to keep the idea of psionics have this through line, that's what this mechanic of the psionic talent die, we're going to get to it as we read along, but they want that core, how your abilities function, to be the through line between all psionics. No matter what subclasses you're playing, for whatever class, it's going to use the psionic talent resource as a way of saying this is what makes it uniquely psionic in its design for 5e. And I actually really like that conceptually. I think it's a really strong like direction to go, while still letting psionics be on all the different classes if you want. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's cool too. Kind of like, and this is a little bit more limited maybe, but how the fighting styles are the same across all different classes. Anything that's going to use psionics is going to use this kind of, core mechanic of it. Which it's good for. It's just good for keeping all the new content straight too.
Yes, I completely agree. I see Vassal Sage, you made an interesting note there. Crystal Dragons and Crystal Dragonborn options, please. Yeah, I didn't miss it either. The little hint toward the end of, hey, that we're going to see some Crystal Dragons coming out. We'll talk about those as we get going. But there's a little bit of a probably accidental spoiler in here, I would imagine. I can't imagine they would have intentionally leaked that. But maybe they did. I don't know.
Do you want to hop right into the first class here, the Psionite, the fighter?
Yes. You want me to start with this guy, or do you want to?
I'll go in. I'll go ahead and read this little flavor text here. Here is the flavor text of the Psionite, because I'm going for the first time. Awake to the psionic power within. A Psionite is a fighter who augments their physical might with psi-infused weapon strikes, telekinetic lashes, and barriers of mental force. Many Githyanki train to become such knights, as do some of the most disciplined high elves. In the world of Office, renowned gladiators in the arenas of the Sorcerer Kings are often Psionites, and in Eberron, the psionic Kalishtar view membership in this knighthood as a special honor. As a Psionite, you might have honed your psionic abilities through solo discipline, unlocked it under the tutelage of a master, or refined it at an academy dedicated to wielding the mind's power as both weapon and shield. Cool. I'm into it.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's really interesting here is they made a specific focus to say, this is how the Psionite fits in all of these classic D&D settings. So I think that's actually kind of departure from what we normally see in these subclass options, right? They don't say how it works and everything. They only usually do that if they're doing something like in Saltmarsh, right? Which is a Greyhawk supplement. They talk about how you could play it in other settings because it's not the Forgotten Realms. So I think this is maybe tying into a little spoiler on how they're writing that there might be some new setting stuff coming out.
But it also makes a lot of sense to me that the Psionite would have that too, because psionics are I think there's some campaign dependency on whether or not are there psychics in your world? Can people have this power in the world that you've created? Because they are a little niche in that regard. But this is quite a first feature that we have here.
I see. Just Otherness is asking, Office? Athos is the world. Athas. I can see where you might have misheard that. Or maybe
the world of Office.
Welcome to Office. Tonight we're going to be changing the ink in the printer.
I'm unfamiliar with Athos personally.
I'm also not. I think, is that Dragonlance? I apologize, folks. I'm poor at my knowledge is bad. Anyway, let's talk about the psionic
talent.
Yeah, so you harbor a wellspring of psionic power within yourself, an energy that ebbs and flows as you channel it in various ways. The power is represented by your psionic talent die, the starting size of which is 1d6. That's Dark Sun. I'm a fool. And psionic talent options, and these are different ways you can use your psionic talent die. So one is called Protective Field. When you or another creature that you can see within 30 feet of you takes damage, you can use your reaction to roll your psionic talent die and reduce the damage taken by the number rolled plus your intelligence modifier, as you can create a momentary shield of telekinetic force.
Cool enough.
Cool. I love it. Very fitting. It just works for me.
Yeah, force shield. I'm into it.
Yeah. Psi-powered leap. When you make a high or a long jump, you can roll your psionic talent die and extend the distance of the jump up to a number of feet equal to twice the number rolled plus your intelligence modifier. Oh, plus twice your intelligence modifier. This extra distance only costs you 1 feet of movement. So you can do super, like, Jedi jumps, basically.
Force jump. Yeah, exactly. Yep, I'm into that
And it
too.
doesn't cost you extra movement, which is awesome. And then telekinetic strike. You can propel each of your attacks with telekinetic force. Once on your turn, immediately after you deal damage to a target within 30 feet of you with a weapon attack, you can roll your psionic talent die and also deal force damage to target equal to the number rolled. Cool. You hit harder because of your psionic oomph. I dig it. And then here's the real core principle, and this is going to be on every subclass here, and that is changing the die's size.
Interesting.
So it starts as a d6. And every time you roll the maximum number on the psionic talent die, it decreases. So it becomes from a d6 to a d4. And if you roll a 4 on the d4, it becomes a 0. It's gone. So that's how your psionic talent kind of works. Every time you roll the highest, it goes down a little bit. But every time you roll the lowest, it goes back up. And the highest it can ever be is the starting d6. Unless at higher levels you'll get, it'll go higher, right? So at level, level 8, or level 5, it goes up to a D8. At level 11, it goes up to a D10, and at level 17, it goes up to a D12. So that's the main resource here: is your psionic talent, your psionic ability, kind of burning out and recharging as you use it. So this is an option that really encourages you to, when you're low on psionic talent, to conserve it. And when you're high on it, when you got a lot of energy, to just go with it and use it. So I really, really, actually, this is a feature that is very, I don't know, controversial, I think, but I like it. I actually really dig this idea of the die that goes up and down as something that's definitely weird and different, but simple enough to understand, I think.
I thought it was going to be a pool when I just assumed it would be a pool of dice that you had when I read Psionic Talent. But so if I'm interpreting this correctly, because you've had some more time with this, all of these abilities here, Protective Field, Telekinetic Strike, etc., that is all at will.
They're all at will. You can do these as long as you have your psionic talent die. And that's what I love about it.
Okay. It seems on the strong side, maybe, but I don't necessarily dislike the die size mechanic. I guess my issue is it works for me when it's a D4 and a D6, but it kind of breaks down for me a little bit.
Well, it's weird though, right? Because once you get it up to, like, let's say the D10, right, at 11th level.
Yeah.
That's where it's going to become, how often are you going to lose a D10? Not super often, right?
Not very often, yeah.
But how powerful are these abilities really at level 10? If these are your features, this is
and that increases to the starting size. Okay, so that's I was picturing the D6 as a flat starting size.
No, they can go back up.
So no, I'm saying, like, when you're at 5th level, you start at a D8. I was thinking you still started at a D6, but you could go up to a D8 at 5th level.
Started at a D8.
Yeah, I mean the system just favors always having the maximum size, and when you're out of combat, you can just kind of, like it says, as a bonus action, you can calm your mind, restore your dice to the starting step. You can't do it until you finish a long rest. By this feature, there is kind of like this ability to game it, I think, where you can just use the abilities and force your psionics until you roll them to a point where you want them to be again, negating that.
Well, no, because if you get down to the D4 and you roll a 4, it goes down to 0 and goes away. You lose a die.
If you roll a 4 on the...
If you roll on a D4, the die becomes unusable until you finish a long rest.
Okay. That's what it was.
So that's the idea. It does go down to nothing. It goes away at the end. And that, like you were reading ahead of the psi replenishment, right? As a bonus action, you can restore your die, but you can't use that if your die is gone.
Yeah, that was the part that I wasn't fully.
If you roll it down to 0.
Around. Okay.
So
I feel a little bit better about it then.
Yeah, and the whole kind of shtick to it. I mean, the balance of it, I'm not positive, right? I don't know if. I'm sure Psi-Powered Leap is fine, but I don't know if Protective Field is too powerful as it is. Maybe it just needs to be the die roll. I don't know if Telekinetic Strike is too powerful. I don't know if it just needs to be the die roll instead of the int modifier.
I think
just the die roll.
Telekinetic Strike is just the die roll, but I was also the Telekinetic Strike was the one that I think is maybe the most worrisome.
It's once a turn though. You only get it once per turn.
Protective Field is the most good one. Yeah, just an extra. It's just a fighter with Divine Strike in a lot of ways.
V-Bunny was saying, can someone like with the lucky feat do something to make this re-rolled? No, because it's not an ability check or a saving throw or anything, and even then it's not a d20 roll. Because this is its own unique thing, it's not an ability check. There's pretty much no way to game this, to my knowledge, in the game. Like a bard couldn't cheat this somehow. I don't know. I'm not sure how the heck you could even begin to do this. But the balance of it aside, what do you think about it as a mechanic, right? As an underlying, like, this is the thing that makes psionics unique. Do you like it or do you not really dig it?
I am
first impression.
Jury's still out for me, but I don't mind it. It doesn't really excite me personally, but I also don't think I would have a bad time using it. I'm kind of neutral at the moment, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Just Otherness is a great comment. I like how they gave the recharge to the low number to maybe take the sting away from a less effective result. I totally agree.
Good design. That's good
design. Yeah, exactly. And let's be real, if you're rolling the D12 and you get the 12 on your attack, you do maximum extra damage. Even though the die size goes, you're still probably pretty stoked. You just did the extra 12 damage. That's pretty good. But yeah, that's what their third level suite of abilities are. At level 7, they get Telekinetic Adept, and this just gives them 2 new ways to use telekinesis. One is Psionic Thrust, and it's when you deal damage with the Telekinetic Strike of your psionic talent, you can make the target roll a strength saving throw against spell save DC equal to your intelligence modifier, and if the target succeeds, unless they succeed, you can knock them prone or move them 10 feet in any direction. Pretty powerful. Actually.
Yeah, the prone's maybe a bit too much, but the 10 feet is just cool, I think.
I mean, I think they're both pretty strong, but I'm not too concerned. This is very much like the, I think Storm Sorcerer has that whenever you hit a creature with lightning damage, so I'm not like...
horizontally, they mean just on the...
You can't throw them up. Yeah,
great.
Yeah, and it's interesting they
not like
that.
Perpendicular to the angle of the strike. That'd be weird.
And then Telekinetic Movement. If your psionic talent die is available, you can move an object or a creature with your mind. As an action, you can target one loose object that is large or smaller, or one willing creature other than yourself. If you can see the target and it is in 30 feet of you, you can move it up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space you can see. Alternatively, if it's a tiny object, you can move it to or from your hand. Either way, you can move the target horizontally, vertically, or both. And when you take this action, your psionic talent die decreases by 1 size.
Ooh.
So that is a mechanic that's going to be in a lot of these that I don't like, but I can see why they needed to include it on something like this. They couldn't just give it to you this for free all the time,
Yeah, that's pretty brutal. Excuse me. A big sneeze, boy.
They're D8s at that point, by the way, when you get this feature.
Yeah, that's pretty brutal at the beginning. But higher levels, when you're kind of more likely to have your dice for longer. I mean, it's all down to RNG. I guess maybe that's what's just in the back of my mind bothering me so much is there's a lot of there's a chance for your class to just sort of fizzle.
Yeah, that's the biggest qualm here, I think. I mean, with the fighter, I think it kind of works because the fighter is such a strong chassis anyway, just as a class.
Yeah.
I'm not really that... You still get to do some cool stuff, It's just maybe you be a little bit more conservative with it when you lose that first one, right? When you're down to the last die, I don't know. The problem is, like you were saying, Pete, once you get to higher levels, the amount of uses goes way up, right?
Yeah.
You end up using it. You get to use this a ton.
But the telekinetic the telekinetic movement, I like the thing that it can do. It's a fun thing to play around with.
Yeah, they really went all out to try and just make this, hey guys, you want to play a Jedi in Dungeons and Dragons? Well, we have a subclass for you.
You thought you wanted to play Eldritch Knight, but you were wrong.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, you thought the Eldritch Knight was a Jedi. Well, I see there's a lot of commentary in the chat. The only thing I see here is that the larger the die is, less of a chance to use it. Is too much of it in flavor. Halo Dude was saying. I don't think that's necessarily out of flavor. I guess you're getting at a much higher level. So the idea is you're becoming much more adept at using your magical features, I would think. And actually, we're about to talk about the psionic field V-Money, so we'll talk about that guy in a minute.
There's also, for a class that's so built in like mental discipline, there's this very large element of chaos to what makes it seem like you actually don't have a lot of control over your powers, which there's a little bit of a
disconnect,
dissonance for me with that flavor, between the flavor and the mechanics, but it's not like a big criticism.
Because I personally see psionics as sort of that almost chaotic, right? Barely grasping kind of deal.
If that was the direction they wanted to go, it just seems like that wasn't the direction they wanted this to be. Like, they talk about like mental discipline and stuff. Because like I could see, like, for example, maybe the most famous current psionic character might be 11 from Stranger Things, and this mechanic definitely represents like that lack of control, that person who has these incredible mental gifts but can't use them. But like for psionic knight who's like trained and been trying to use them correctly, like it feels maybe that doesn't quite work for this, and maybe it'll feel more right to me on some of the other ones. But let's talk about psi-enhanced metabolism here.
Yeah, Pete, you want to take this guy?
Yeah, little guy here. Psionic energy flowing through you has bolstered your mind and body. You have resistance to poison and psychic damage, and you are immune to the poison condition. I feel nothing about this one way or the other. It's pretty bread and butter feature.
I agree.
Yeah.
Pretty straightforward. I like having these, personally.
I do too.
So, like, I don't know. I like having these little, like, yeah, this is just how your crazy ability, like, plays out, right, or how it affects your body, right, over time. Something that's not necessarily, well, super powerful, but I don't know. I think it's cool.
Hey, let's talk about. Imagine being Peter Ryan, always rolling the max on your psionic talent dice. You basically get screwed over. Our luck will be cursed. No, you see, Halo Dude is we'll always roll ones, and then to get it up to the highest when we're low, and then we'll always roll one below max when we're doing damage. So don't worry, it won't affect me and you.
I'm gonna always just roll the lowest. And it won't matter that they go up.
Oh, yeah, you'll just always
always roll the lowest. Pete, how about you tell us about Bulwarker Force? Because I can't bring myself to talk about this ability again.
You can shield yourself and others with telekinetic force. As a bonus action, you can choose creatures, which can include you, that you can see within 30 feet of you, up to a number of creatures equal to your intelligence modifier, minimum of 1 creature. Each of the chosen creatures is protected by half cover for 1 minute or until you're incapacitated. Rough. Once you use this feature, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest, unless you decrease your psionic die by 1 size to use this feature again. So every combat, as a bonus action, you can give your whole party +2 AC without concentration. That
stacks on everything, yeah.
That is absolutely biggity busted.
Yeah, how do I put this? I hate it. I hated it when this was a weird artificer feature. I hate it now. I just hate it. It's horrible. Get rid of it. Be gone.
Yeah. I don't mind. I would feel better about it. The thing that could make this better is if it was just you. And this was like a kind of like a capstone-y feature where it was like, oh, you get this one cool thing where you can give yourself a force field. It's not interesting, but it would make more sense to me than just this really casual bonus action. Your whole party has half cover for a whole fight. That's whack.
And once again, they're using this feature, and I hate this. I'm going to say that right now. I'm going to say it forever. I'm going to say, even though it's part of the game now, I'm a spellcaster, and I can spend my spell slot to regain this class feature. I hated it on spells. I hate it just as much in the psionic talent. the whole point on your psionic talent die is it goes up and down as you use your features. This is totally counter to that core principle. I'll say the fighter has a lot of ways to use a psionic talent die, so it's not too bad here. But when we get on the rogue, and all of their features have this stupid caveat, which, spoiler if they do, it's shameful. It's this really interesting ebb and flow concept that they created. Just really depressing.
Yeah, I don't mind it on this. Personally, I don't see it as being that problematic because, like, it does at least, even if it's not a good, even if it's not like a fun way to go, I definitely think that like the flavor resonates for me because it's like, oh, well, you've used your biggest thing. And the whole idea is when you do the most you can do, it goes down. This would fall in that category. Like that makes some sense to me. But I just don't know if I like it in the context of also like what the whole feature is. Like I was more into it on the spells than I am on this because it's such a limited kind of pool that can just disappear. Telekinetic Master. Jeremy, tell me about Telekinetic Master.
Telekinetic Master. So, sorry, I was just doing something. Yeah, your ability to move creatures and objects with your mind is matched by few. If your psionic talent die is available, you can cast a telekinesis spell, requiring no components. Your spellcasting ability is intelligence, and when you use this, your psionic talent die decreases by 1 size. I mean, I kind of get it. But at level 18, would it kill you to just say you can cast telekinesis at will?
Or at least do what they did. I think they should have done what they did with Bulwark of Force, at least, which is
you get it once.
You use it once, and then you can do it again for the.
Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it. I think actually Haley's got a really cool idea. Why not have this the Bulwark of Force be temp HP instead of half cover? Yeah, I don't know why. I like that more.
D&D time at level 2 as a war wizard, you get a similar feature on yourself only, and you can do it for free forever, basically. Oh, do you mean like the Bulwark of Force? The difference is that consumes your reaction, and the whole class is built around that mechanic. This is just, you just do it, and then you have it, and you got your whole kit still.
Yeah, and
also,
I think
it's your whole party.
Yeah, and I think that's the real core difference, is that's kind of the feature of War Wizard. Is that reaction deflect, right? That's their core thing that makes them really special, to me at least. Like, that's the thing that feels really dynamic to playing a war wizard, and that's okay. They can have their thing that makes them special. This, you're getting it tacked on at what, like 11th level. This is a 15th level. This isn't a core thing that makes you feel special. This is tacked on at the end. And it's just an ability that this is a second or third class that they've put this feature on. Why is it that they can't just let it die? I hate it. That's all I've got. Sorry, I don't have anything else to say. I don't like the half cover thing. I think the half cover thing makes the most sense on this than it does on any of the other ones they've had on so far.
Yeah,
but I still dislike it. It's just so strong.
Yeah, that's just also far too aggressive of an application of it too.
I completely agree.
Soul Knife.
Well, because before we jump into that, yeah,
overview.
I do like it. But like the latter half, I'm not super into. But the front half, I like.
Yeah, I'm not. I just honestly don't know how to. I'll tell you. Here's my final thought. This doesn't excite me. I don't really want to. I wouldn't really want to play this. I don't think that the design is bad. I don't think that the whole design of the psionic talent features and the way that mechanic's going to work throughout this, I don't think that's a bad design either. And I like on paper that idea of the ebb and flow, but for one, a subclass where my resources are so luck dependent, and sometimes I could just like, I picture going into a big dungeon crawl and knowing that it's going to be like a long encounter, and then rolling max twice and being like, well, now I don't have my psionic talent for this whole dungeon. That kind of bums me out.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. I can't really argue with that.
So I don't think it's a bad design. I don't think I would personally want to play it, but I don't think there's anything wrong with having it in the game, because I can see where a lot of people would like this too. Just maybe not to my taste.
Yeah, I don't know. I think overall, and here's where I like kind of I think my end thoughts are, it's a huge improvement over what we saw previously.
Yeah, I can get behind that.
And
the Mystic was not in a great spot.
And from what you're seeing here, do you think that psionic talent die has legs to stand on? Right? I mean, if talk about our rubric, right? Space, obviously space for psionics, balance, and I mean, we're looking at balance, design, and playability. Do you think that psionic talent die, obviously you already said you don't really super dig the flavor of it, but do you think it fits those three categories decently?
The playability is really where I have the biggest issue. It's the potential for it to just be a huge bummer to just not get to interact with your core subclass feature for long periods of time. And
yeah,
I guess part of it is
why, right? They have that psi replenishment.
The psi replenishment is part of it too.
It's that one gimme when you get burned out quick.
Yeah.
Oh well, I feel you.
Yeah, I don't know.
You don't dig it. I kind of do. I think it has potential. I don't know if this implementation is
I can get with you on that. I think it definitely has potential. I would like maybe just a little bit more. Like, honestly, if it just didn't, I almost want it to not burn out.
Anderson.
And just work like that, and then maybe just tone the features differently, but just have it just fluctuate up and
you
down.
Can always use it
stronger. Yeah, would be more appealing to me personally. But
I'm not sure how I feel.
Let's go on to the Rogue and start on that one and see how the execution is here.
Soul Knife. So the Soul Knife was, I believe, far and away the most popular implementation on the Mystic class, that first take on Psionics they did. And this is just a new take on it for this new take on Psionics. And the idea with the Soul Knife is, while most burglar or assassins strike with physical weapons, and many burglars and spies use thieves' tools to infiltrate secure locations, the Soul Knife strikes and infiltrates with the mind, cutting through barriers both physical and psychic. These rogues discover psionic power within themselves and channel it to do their roguish work. They find easy employment as members of Thieves' Guild, and they're often mistrusted by rogues, who are leery of anyone using strange mind powers to conduct their business. Most governments would happily employ a Soul Knife as a spy. So I guess the vibe we're getting here, and they give some ideas of, if you're an elf, why you may be a Soul Knife, because maybe you had some work in the Feywild that has trained and honed your psionic powers. A Gith being a Soul Knife to fight their Githyanki, the Githzerai becoming a Soul Knife to fight their Githyanki foe, or the Sorcerer Kings of Athos, Dark Sun, to have Soul Knives to eliminate their enemies, just as other Soul Knives seek to undermine them. So I dig it. Here's the feel I've got. Well, let's jump right into it, I guess. So the idea of the Soul Knife, they conjure their weapons and they use psionics to boost their abilities. Pretty straightforward. Psionic talent is a third level feature. You harbor a wellspring of psionic power, yada, yada, yada. You use your psionic talent die, which starts the D6, and you get these abilities. Psi bolstered knack. When your non-psionic training fails you, you can tap into your psionic power for help. If you fail an ability check using a skill or tool with which you have proficiency, you can roll your psionic talent die and add the number rolled to the check, potentially turning failure into a success.
Cool, I like that.
I hate it, and I'll talk about that why in a minute.
Interesting.
I despise it, but we'll talk about it in a second. And then Psychic Whispers. You can use your psychic ability. Actually, do you want to talk about the Psi bolstered knack?
Yeah, no, go into that. You've obviously had a lot of time to really seep into why you think Psi bolstered knack is an issue.
Yeah.
My first instinct is that's cool, but tell me why.
First problem, once you get to level 11 and Rogue gets reliable talent, which is a core Rogue class feature, this no longer does anything. Because Rogues don't fail ability checks once they get to level 11 if they're proficient. End of story. Just doesn't happen. So first, this is the ability that goes away after a time. And secondly, and I think this is the more important one, let's say, Pete, I'm talking to you, and I'm the Soul Knife, right? And you are, I don't know, the Baron. And I'm like, yo, Baron, can you give us some resources for this thing? And chat, the Dungeon Master says, all right, roll me a persuasion check. And I roll my persuasion check, right? And I get like a 15. And chat says, well, Pete, you're the Baron. You can offer him like a cart and maybe a donkey. And that's a partial success. this leaves no room for partial success. It talks explicitly about failure. And that's something that is never done in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons
I see what you're saying.
with ability checks. I don't think it should ever be on the Dungeon Master, unless it's incredibly obvious, to say, yes, you failed or succeeded on the ability check. I think what happens should show that, right?
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. If this feature is going to stay as it is, it needs to be more complicated than it is.
What's really dumb about it is when they get down to the feats later on, this exists as a feat in like a well-written form that works in D&D. I have no idea why it's inconsistent and why this. I hate it. Sorry.
Yeah, it seems
just no.
That binary wasn't something that I was considering.
I wasn't at first either. It was pointed out to me by a friend of mine, and it's just like
I have less issue with it being duplicated by reliable talent, because it just gives you a more reliable option later. Like if you were to fail, you could use it, even though it's extremely unlikely. But it's fun when you get it, which I think is important for a feature. So that doesn't bother me as much. But the fail thing, it needs to be worded differently. Like, I
mean, the fail just needs to go away. Just when you roll an ability check, you can use a psionic talent die to increase the roll. Use this before or after you know the result.
Ability check with which you have proficiency.
Right. Yeah, really easy. It just, I don't understand why it talks about failure here. I guess the idea is you don't waste it.
There are some checks that are an objective pass or fail. For example,
yeah, certainly.
There aren't really a lot of partial successes in picking a lock. There aren't a lot in escaping a grapple. So there's some where that kind of would work, but they just need to make it clear that, like, for things that are non-binary, the GM has to decide if, you know.
Thank you, everybody. All should obey my tenets and my extreme declarations of things being bad. Sorry if anyone likes that feature. It's just that one core part of it. I'm with Pete. You know, it wouldn't really be bad if it didn't specifically tie to failure, in my opinion.
Yeah, that would be the biggest change.
That's just where you can't have that in 5e. Kind of why is that here? Pete, you want to talk about psychic whispers? Because this I also hate.
Oh god. You can use your psychic abilities to establish telepathic communication between yourself and others, perfect for quiet infiltration. As an action, you give yourself and at least one other creature the ability to speak telepathically with each other. When you do so, roll your psionic talent die and choose creatures you can see up to a number of creatures equal the number rolled. For 1 hour, the chosen creatures can speak telepathically with you, and you can speak telepathically with them. To send or receive a message, no action required. You and the other creature must be within 1 mile of each other. A creature can't use this telepathy if it can't speak any languages. A creature can end the telepathic connection at any time. No action required. You and the creature don't need to speak a common language to understand each other. Yeah, that's not a great... That's a really inelegant design. It's just it's slamming in the use of the psionic talent die because they wanted it to tie to that mechanic.
No, Pete, that's not it, because in the sorcerer later on, they have a different thing that does the same thing without it being bad. For some reason, they just, like, they have the good version of Psi Bolstered Knack on the feet, and they have the good version of, and by good I mean well-designed and fun-to-use version, of Psychic Whispers on the sorcerer, and they just put the terrible versions on the Soul Knife for I don't know why. I'm baffled.
So I just assume it's another telepathic feature.
Yes, and it works. The time that it lasts is based on the roll instead of the number.
Actually, my first thought was it seems more like this should be based on how long you can communicate rather than.
Not hard to fix. They actually fixed it later on, and I don't get it. It's that quality control. Why would you have two features that do the same thing differently, and one of them is just objectively bad, like this one?
That's weird. I agree that one's rough. I'm with you on that one.
Ugh. It's just that level of like care.
And is everything for the rest of the side the same?
No. Not
so changing the die size works different on this?
Oh, sorry. The changing the die size works the same. So note at this point, the only things you can do to roll your psionic talent die are make an ability check, right, for Psi Bolstered Knack. Oh, sorry, fail an ability check for Psi Bolstered Knack, or use your action to create a telepathic link, right? Those are the only two things right now that you can do to roll your die. keep that in mind as we go through this class and you see all the other things you can't do to roll your die.
Psychic blades. You
Psychic
can
blades,
manifest.
Oh, go ahead, please.
You can manifest your psionic power as shimmering blades of psychic energy. When you're about to make a melee or ranged weapon attack against a creature, you can manifest a psychic blade from your free hand and make the attack with that blade. This magic blade is a simple melee weapon with the finesse and thrown properties. It has a normal range of 60 feet and no long range. And on a hit, it deals psychic damage equal to 1d6 plus the ability modifier you used for the attack roll. The blade vanishes immediately after it hits or misses its target, and it leaves no mark on its target if it deals damage. After you attack with the blade, you can make a melee or ranged weapon attack with a second psychic blade as a bonus action on the same turn, provided your other hand is free to create it. The damage die of this bonus attack is
You
1d4 instead
Why?
of 1d6.
Why? Why is it a D4? Why? It was such an elegant and good ability up to then, and then it just randomly it's 1 damage average different. There's no, like, I don't get it. I don't understand. Yeah. It's baffling.
I made I have a rogue subclass that I've had in my back pocket for a while now that gives the rogue 2d6 weapons that are basically thrown like this. Well, I didn't see any issue with it. I don't see why this matters that much. It's just like short swords. It's just short swords that you can throw.
Halo, dude, I appreciate, saying this is hilarious because it's harming me to read this a little bit. And I know I'm being very exaggerating, very dramatic here for entertainment purposes, but also this isn't, Jeremy's homebrew or Halo Dude's homebrew, V-Bunny's homebrew. This is Wizards of the Coast. I kind of expect a much higher level of quality coming out from them than we see on this rogue just so far, and we're 3rd level. But yeah, like, these are psychic weapons, so okay, they deal psychic damage, there's the benefit of them, but they'll never become, they can never get a plus to damage, they can never get a plus to their hit. They're always just D6s. I just don't understand why the second one has to be a D4. That's just so overly complicated.
Yeah.
It's stupid.
Yeah, I don't know.
Soul Blades. Let's talk about these.
If they didn't do that, there was nothing wrong with, like, the rest of the features.
Yeah, the rest of it was awesome. Actually, perfect. Even. Let's. They just soiled a perfect feature. Anyway, Soul Blades. I'm fine. Your psionic blades, and this I think they did okay, are now an expression of your psi-fused soul, giving you finer control over them in the following ways. Homing strikes. If you make an attack roll with your psychic blades and miss the target, you can roll your psionic talent die and add the number rolled to the attack roll. Now, if we stopped there, it's a good ability, we're fine with it. But if this causes the attack to hit, your psionic talent die decreases by 1 size regardless of the number rolled. Okay. Sure. So you can only use this feature if you miss, and if it causes you to hit. So if it does anything, your psionic talent die goes down. Keep that in mind. And then psychic teleportation. If your psychic talent die is available, you can hurl your psychic blades to magically teleport to another location. As a bonus action, you manifest one of your psychic blades and throw it at an unoccupied space you can see up to a number of feet away, equal to 5 times the highest number on your psionic talent die. You then teleport to that space and the blade vanishes and your psionic talent die decreases by 1 size. So there's 2 features, and all they do, your only combat features so far, force your psionic talent die to go down if you use them even once. And I'll give you a hint, the rest of its features only cause your psionic talent die to go down. None of your combat features have the capacity to increase your psionic talent die. This is it's disrespectful from a design perspective to the concept they created and wanted to make as a through line of your psionic talent die ebbing and flowing. Do you have any thoughts on this? They're cool abilities, but just the implementation is offensive to me.
Yeah, I mean, homing strikes they wanted to do homing strikes. This is my thinking on what their thought process was behind the scenes. They really liked the idea of homing strikes, but they kept thinking that it was too powerful to let them use the psionic die, and this was the only compromise that they could come to, when it would have been better to just find a different implementation of homing strikes or just not use it.
But well, hold on for a second there, Pete. Here's my feeling on homing strikes, right? If homing strikes added to the attack roll, right? Let's say they add to the attack roll, like it does here. How game breaking is it that happens? Always hits.
It makes this a rogue that always hits.
And what do the other rogue subclasses do in combat? Because that's the only thing in combat that this rogue does that the other rogues don't do at this point. This one conjures weapons and it always hits with its attack, or more reliably hits its attack, right?
It's just something that I think they're nervous about playing around with it, and I can understand that. I don't know what the implications of having a character that's so consistent with attack rolls. Rogues are reliable on everything else, so I don't know why they wouldn't also be reliable on attack rolls. Well, I'm not like afraid of this feature, but it is very
I can see it. Yeah, and the psychic teleportation is just cool. What's weird is the distance is already based on your die. Like, why isn't psychic teleportation just you roll the die and that's how far you can go? It wouldn't be as fun, but at least I could see that I can get rid of that dumb the die goes down automatically part. You know what I mean?
I'm just throwing an idea out here because I don't think that this will be a final. I don't think that people are going to like this, and that it will not be the implementation of psionics that they finally get right. How would you feel if things like homing strikes increased the range of abilities that'll make it go down? So rather than it automatically goes down, it's like if you rolled the highest or the second highest, it goes down. You know, something like that. That's an awkward phrasing, but just in terms of how that would balance out, how would you feel about that?
It'd be better. The problem here is what we're seeing here, and Halo did saying this just seems like we're purposely gimping the subclass. I'm not sure that's what it is. It seems like they had a subclass here from the Mystic that they liked, and they just made an absolute half-assed attempt to tie in the psionic talent die to the class. That's what it looks like here to me, because it doesn't make sense anywhere where they've used it. It just kind of sort of works. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I'm just not sure. I think there needs to be a whole... This design doesn't work with psionic talent die the way they have it. They'd have to totally change it.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, it just is not... It doesn't work.
Yeah, I don't know how you'd make it work either, but it doesn't work with that as is. I want to also point out a comment that Halo Dude made in chat, which was, they do this professionally. Who are we to question them? That's just a good overall discussion point. And obviously Halo Dude is joking, implying, just of course, listen to what Wizard says. They made the game, which
every edition of Dungeons and Dragons has been flawless from the get-go. That's why we've made new editions. Oh wait,
and it's always bad to kind of blindly go in trusting Wizards is making good content, because even though mostly they do, and I would say most of their published content is good. Most.
Yeah. I'd say the vast majority.
There's a reason this is playtest content, you know. I think Wizards knows that this is not their best work. They have to, because they put out good work consistently. But I also wanted to point out, I think there's some wisdom in that statement, because who are we to question Wizards? They do this professionally.
True.
I always like to actually legitimately take some time and look at stuff like this, because Wizards does do this professionally, and sometimes if they're saying stuff, they're like, maybe they got something here. I don't see it, but at least I give them an extra pass to some extent because they do.
And you know, maybe this is actually fine. And I'm just obviously what Pete and I are saying here isn't that this is bad, because what it comes down to is this is totally playable. Everything we've talked about here is playable. It is reasonably playable, and will honestly probably be fun to play. The difference is, right, we can see that it could be better. And in these cases that we're talking about with the Rogue, it could be so much better. And that's where we're really coming in here, and why I'm kind of so aggressive about it. It should be better. You know?
I just took my socks off, so it's a party now.
Well, let's talk about Psionic Veil, probably the coolest feature in this entire document. You can weave a veil of psychic static to mask yourself. As an action, you can magically become invisible along with anything you're wearing or carrying for 10 minutes or until you dismiss this effect, no action required. This invisibility ends if you deal damage to a creature or if you force a creature to make a saving throw. Once you use this feature, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest, unless you decrease your psionic talent die by 1 die to use this feature again.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Okay, but Pete, invisibility is a 2nd level spell, right? You're a 13th level rogue.
It has the slight advantage of not being a spell.
And invisibility lasts for an hour. It both take an action. All right, this doesn't require concentration, but they both have the same limits on usability. Why isn't this, and here's my thought, why isn't it lasts for a number of minutes equals to the number rolled on your psionic talent die? And then you can get rid of this whole, you don't use this feature, just let them always use the feature.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Why? There's no reason to limit this. There is no reason to limit this.
And that would make the class feel, that's a really cool
cohesive
idea, Jeremy. That would make the class, that would make the class also feel unique, because that would be the thing that people would look forward to is, I get my psionic veil and I become the fucking predator. Like, that would be really cool. But it's not that. And
V-Money's saying
it's not bad, but yours is definitely better.
Yeah, and V-Money's saying, right, it can't be counterspelled or dispelled. Well, it actually expressly says you can magically become invisible. Because they use the word magically, you can dispel it. So there are little nuances like that. However, you cannot counterspell it because it is not the invisibility spell. And Psionic Veil doesn't include casting a spell in the description. Oh, really? Or force a creature to make a saving throw. So you can cast spells while invisible with this.
You could always do that, couldn't you?
I'm not sure. What about
even like effectively, because you would just cast a spell and then your invisibility would end.
Well, no, because why would it though?
Yeah.
Yeah, this should end if you cast a spell, not just force a creature to make a saving throw. This is not including, and I think the idea is rogues don't have spells, dude man. But this isn't really thinking about multi-classing here. There wasn't a lot of deep thought.
But is that true for invisibility?
Yes, casting a spell ends invisibility.
Oh.
Yeah. I think it should work like that for that, personally. I don't understand why this one is weirdly nuanced and different.
It should just be the same as invisibility, but let's do Read Mind.
Rend Mind.
Rend Mind. I said not Read Mind.
You want to take this guy? This one's actually not bad.
I would love to. You can sweep your psychic blades directly through a creature's mind. When you use your psychic blades to deal sneak attack damage to a creature, you can force that target to make a wisdom saving throw. Dex proficiency bonus. Unless the save succeeds, the target is stunned until the end of your next turn. Once you use this feature, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest, or unless you decrease the psionic talent die. Interesting. And also, Jeremy, now seeing the full breadth of the class, I do have...
There is no way to increase your psionic talent die.
Yeah, I have more issue with
failing
the
ability
becoming
checks.
obsolete at Psi-Bolstered Knack, because before, the thing I was thinking was like, well, you can just make a lot of stealth checks like rogues do, and then use your Psi-Bolstered Knack for that, but you won't get to because you'll always succeed on them because you're a rogue.
I said it earlier. They've such a fucking hard-on for this. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you decrease your die, or you use a spell slot, that they put it on everything and never looked at this subclass as a whole. Because this is one of those subclasses where there are some features that are okay. Like Rend Mind is fine the way it is. Personally, I don't see why they can't always use that feature. At level 17, a monk can stun every turn on a saving throw. Why can't the rogue? Tell me. There's no difference to me. They do approximately the same amount of damage.
It's just a difference of the resource base versus the non-resource base.
It is resource based. It's based on your die.
Well, this
add the die to your damage.
But you're saying if it was based on the
for Rend Mind, right? If Rend Mind dealt your die extra in the sneak attack, and then stunned, and that was its resource.
How would you feel about this mechanic then, Jeremy? This is here's another Pete Lyons patented revision.
Give me.
To the way this works. What if instead of when you use these features, they go down? What if it's when you use these features, roll the die, and they go down on the high number and they don't go up on the low number.
I don't like that. And the reason I don't like it, Pete, is because it's an exception to the rule. And if all of the features are an exception to the rule, why is it a rule? You know,
Yeah,
that's
well,
kind of the through line of the row of psionics. It's supposed to be this ebb and flow of the die.
That's fair.
You know,
But
and it just
also, like,
it doesn't exist here. You know, all these features, some of them are fine, some are meh, but when you put them together as a subclass, it sucks.
but maybe then that's the problem with having one psionic rule, because I would rather, like,
The problem is they didn't take the effort to try and make this work with it, though, Pete. That's the thing. They didn't try. That's why I'm so offended by this.
yeah.
There's no attempt to make it really work. It's just tacked on, literally tacked on.
Yeah, I mean, as it stands, they shouldn't have done the psionic talent the way they did. They should have just made some subclasses inspired by the idea of psionics, rather than making them work in some specific way.
I think
Fargan was saying, I think the whole
back.
psionic die resource system is eh. I agree. That's kind of where it's almost exactly what I was saying earlier in a lot more words. You summed it a little bit more precisely.
Before we go on to the sorcerer, I do want to read something way back at the beginning, because it's something we glossed over. And it is okay. Okay. Where is it? Yeah, I can't remember exactly where it is. But one of the things that they specifically mentioned in here, and they say the words, "This is how psionics will work going forward." I can't see where they said that, but there was a very definite sounding statement somewhere in here, and I can't.
This is the psionic thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and that scares me, because if this is the direction that they're actually going to stick with, like irrespective of feedback, oh god.
I mean, we'll see.
I can't find it right now, but
they could maybe make it work. But like the idea isn't bad. It's just not, this execution of it isn't great.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, Pete, let's talk about the sorcerer, because I think the sorcerer is going back in the good direction. This is pretty good again, like similar to the fighter.
Okay, cool. Yeah, the fighter I didn't think was terrible.
Yeah.
The rogue was a little rough. Psionic Soul Sorcerer. One day a light blazed forth within you. The illumination of psionic power. That's a cool start. Your mind now simmers with this power, the full extent of which you won't fully grasp for years to come. That's a weird statement. You can touch other minds with it and alter the world around you by using it to control the magical energy of the multiverse. Will this power shine from you as a hopeful beacon to others, or will you be a source of terror to those who feel the stab of your mind and witness the strange manifestations of your might? Some examples of how it's used in worlds are the things we've already talked about. And then, as a psionic soul sorcerers, you decide how you acquired your powers. Were you born with them, and did they manifest throughout childhood, or did an extraordinary event later in life leave you shining with psionic awareness? Consult the psionic origins table for a possible origin of your power. These seem cool.
Yeah, and this is interesting. You were exposed to Far Realm's warping influence. Now you can use your mind in ways you never thought possible. You're also convinced that there is a tendril growing on you. All right, that's a little funky. Sure. The first part I dug. The second part was a little funky. A psychic wind from the astral plane carried psionic energy into your being. When you use your powers now, faint motes of light sparkle around you. I dig it. You or your ancestor were trained by a Githzerai monk to unlock the psionic potential within yourself. I like that one a lot, Pete.
Yeah.
But there are a bunch more really good ones here, but one I wanted to mention, two I wanted to mention in particular. As a child, you had an imaginary friend that looked like a flump or a strange platypus-like creature.
Of course.
One day, it gifted you psionic powers, which ended up being not so imaginary.
Jeremy, I didn't know they put your backstory in the game.
I know, right? And then another very interesting one. You grew up near the lair of a sapphire dragon, and now your eyes glow with sapphire light when you use your newfound powers.
Oh, yeah, that's the...
Yeah,
That's the tilted hand.
I feel like they did not mean to release that one, but maybe they don't know. Crystal
I
Dragon.
want to read your nightmares whisper the truth to you. Your psionic powers are not your own. You draw them from your vestigial twin.
What?
Holy hell.
That was pretty whack.
Oh, jeez. All right, yeah.
It's
Psionic talent. You harbor a wellspring of psionic power, blah, blah, blah. Here's the talent options. The first one here, we get Psionic Discovery. You can unlock the ability to cast a mind-oriented sorcerer spell you don't already know. After meditating for 10 minutes, which can be done during a rest, roll your Psionic talent die and choose a sorcerer spell of a level for which you have spell slots, and that is in the School of Divination or Enchantment. You know the chosen spell for a number of hours equal to the number you rolled.
Awesome.
That's pretty cool.
Love it.
I'm actually very into that. Yeah.
Awesome way to tie in the Psionic talent die and deal with the biggest issue the sorcerer has, which is I only know a few spells. I love it. Pete, you want to talk about this next one, which is
wait. I want to. I want to just quickly. You can just do this if you have enough time. You can just kind of do the. Oh, you know it for hours. Okay, that's the limiter. Okay, just making sure you could.
But you could do this like 6 or 7 times if you wanted.
Yeah, you could just do this a kit, but then you're also
times during a short rest, and
yeah, you're using the resource then.
Yeah, the chance you lose your die.
Yeah, it's cool though.
Oh, absolutely. Psychic sorcery. I hate this, and I'll explain why. When you cast a spell, you can use your mind to form it rather than relying on words, gestures, and materials. To do so, roll your Psionic talent die. The spell then requires no verbal components, and if you rolled the spell, the level of the spell or higher, the spell doesn't require somatic or material components either. So this...
Yeah, it's a little funky.
So it's like, all right, I'm bound and gagged. I want to use my psionic sorcery. All right, well, I rolled a 2, so now I can't do the material or somatic components of my thing because I'm tied up, and the spell level's above 2. So what happens now? Right, like... Also, this is just weird subtle spell. Why not just say you know the subtle spell of meta magic? End of ability. This doesn't count against some of meta magics, you know. They have a thing in Sorcerer that does this talent.
Maybe like if it was just, it should just be one. It shouldn't mess with material. It has to mess with material components.
Yeah, hold up, Dungeon Master. I need to make an accounting minigame before I can tell you what I'm doing. Now, I will say there's an argument here of like not using the material components being for like, oh, divination. I don't need a crystal ball to do scrying. That's cool. But this is one of the weird places where maybe, just maybe, they actually could have used the you cast a spell, you get the ability of the quicken spell, it doesn't require material components, decrease the size by 1.
Right? They could have just put it all like, they should just put it all on the, if you go lower than the spell level, above the spell level, it works. Otherwise, like, the spell fails to cast. And you waste it, which would not be a great feature, but it's an option that I wouldn't have an issue with.
The problem with it here is it's just a weird, slightly different quicken spell on a class that has quicken spell. It's going to be confusing and strange.
And then telepathic speech here, you kind of told me a little bit about this one in advance. This one's been foreshadowed.
This is actually good. This is a good implementation.
This is bonus action, roll psionic talent, create a connection, and the number of hours is the talent die. Great. I don't think we need to even go over that anymore. That's a good.
And the number of miles that it goes is equal to the talent die as well.
Oh, that's also cool.
Yeah.
I don't know. They should have done it on the other one.
Yep. It's just dumb.
Weird that they didn't, but that one's good. Actually, Jeremy, let me throw this theory at you.
Different people made different. I think different members of the crew made different ones of these, and they just stuck them all together without reading them. That's the only explanation I can come up with.
Here's my more optimistic theory. They put these 2 different telepathic speech executions down to see what different people thought of them and how they each were reviewed on the review.
I thought that too, but then I reread the Rogue again and thought, wow, this is so shitty, I can't accept that. It's so terrible.
Fair enough.
It's too bad.
Maybe, who knows?
Sorry, Arku, thanks for the correction. I meant subtle spell, not quicken spell. But you're right, Pete, that's probably what it is. They probably wanted feedback on both implementations.
Psychic Strike. Again, that's the more optimistic way to look at it the other way.
Yeah, you're almost certainly correct. I'm just being a dick.
You have to channel additional psychic energy into your spells. Immediately after you deal damage to a creature with a sorcerer spell for which you expend a spell slot, you can roll your psionic talent die and also deal psychic damage to that creature equal to the number rolled. You can deal this extra damage only once per turn.
Cool.
Psychic number rolled. Yeah, no issue there.
Now, the one question I do have with this is using the what's-who's at Metamagic. What's the one that lets you reroll damage die? Empowered spell Metamagic. You could actually re-roll this die at least once to try and get the maximum or minimum roll on it. If you did this on a spell that had, yeah, because you get to re-roll the damage die of the spell.
But this isn't. But this isn't rolling. If this isn't a damage die of the spell, it's you roll this die and then add that.
Oh, yeah, correct. It's immediately after you deal damage with the spell. Yeah. No, never mind. So then you couldn't. All right. I thought there was some interesting little tiddly bit now, but
I like it though.
Oh yeah, no, it's great. No problems with the feature at all.
Yep. I think basically
ways to use your psionic talent die that can make it go up or down. Whoa,
yeah,
it's
every class,
like this is cohesive.
Every class should have some variant on Psychic Strike. The Rogue needed one.
Yeah. Someone mind over body.
Yeah,
you can use the psi flow that flows through you to give your body extraordinary abilities. As a bonus action, you can roll your psionic talent die and spend one or more sorcery points to magically transform yourself for a number of hours equal to the number rolled. Until the transformation ends, you gain one of the following benefits of your choice for each sorcery point that you spent, choosing a different benefit for each point. And those are, you can see visible creatures within 60 feet of you, provided they aren't behind total cover. You gain flying speed equal to your walking speed and can hover. You gain a swimming speed equal to twice your walking speed and can breathe underwater. And your body, along with any equipment you're carrying, becomes pliable. You can move through any space as narrow as 1 inch without squeezing, and you can spend 5 feet of movement to escape from non-magical restraints or being grappled. I like this a lot.
Yeah.
This works for me in the Githyanki kind of warping the reality of limbo kind of vibe. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Weird.
The duration thing with the psionic talent die, it's kind of just like an excuse to roll it.
Yeah, well, it's a cool through line. I actually really dig it.
Yeah, I agree. I wasn't saying that that's a bad thing.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But it's a good kind of artificial way of being like, and it's not like it's a bad thing also if like, oh, you rolled a 5, you get 5 hours of this. Oh, cool. You know. I don't know. I like it. I don't really have all that much to say about it. This is pretty well designed, actually.
Yeah. And then there's some kids yelling outside. I hope no one hears it. Anyway, Psychic Aura. This is an ability I don't like because of what it does, not actually the design. The design's fine. If your psionic talent die is available, you can unleash your psionic power in a crackling aura of psychic energy. As a bonus action, you can magically radiate this transparent 30-foot radius aura for 1 minute, or until you're incapacitated or lose the use of your psionic talent die. Whenever a creature starts its turn in the area or moves into it for the first time on a turn, you roll your psionic talent die and deal psychic damage to the creature, equaling the number rolled plus your charisma modifier. If the creature takes any of this damage, its speed is halved until the start of its next turn. Powerful ability. And you're rolling your psionic talent die all the time for every creature whenever it moves into range. Or starts to turn there.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Farka was saying that the capstone's weak. Man, this is awesome. I think this is very good.
Yeah,
Controlling speed?
I don't know. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, I think this is very solid.
It's a bonus action to activate it, and then it just goes. You just do this.
Yeah, I like this a lot. I don't know. I think this is fine, personally.
I would say I favor the Psychic Aura. I don't know. You just didn't like the flavor of it? Was that what it was?
Oh, no. I love it. I actually think it's really cool. I think it's really flavorful. Like, the weight of your psychic power is dragging creatures. That works so well to me.
What
the thing that doesn't work for me... No, it's a speed. I don't like having speed. That makes me upset as a dungeon master.
Just
but
as
like
a mechanic. I getcha.
Yeah, it's just a very powerful feature.
Yeah, it's good.
And Farku's saying it's just a way to roll your side die a lot. It is, absolutely. And at that point, your die is a D12, so it's going to last you quite a while.
A good amount of damage with this, too. But
yeah, I think this is pretty good.
Kind of a cool feature. Actually, this sorcerer, I think, is in a good place.
Yeah, no, it's that's why again the fighter pretty solid. Its late game was a little weak or a little shifty, but whatever. Sorcerer pretty dang good. The rogue, it just I don't understand. Like,
Yeah, it's just not very good.
yeah, well, it's not just it's not a good thing. I can deal with mechanically not good. It's just talking about stuff I don't like. Let's jump into these spells, Pete.
Well, I was gonna say, Jeremy, we've been going for a while, and
Yeah.
I know we're gonna want to go over these spells, but would you mind taking a break from this for a little bit and breaking it up? Because I'd really like to get our Lich Lair going. Because I know
You're right. I'm so sorry, guys. Do we want to take a quick break first, Pete, and then jump into Lich's Lair?
Yeah, and then afterwards, depending on where we're at on time, we can probably
yeah.
come back to these, and we'll also make sure we go over some of the workshop stuff as well.
All right.
So let's take a quick break.
We'll be back in just a second, guys. See you soon.
See you soon, y'all.